with people. So
Oh yeah,
it's too uncomfortable, and also I just wanted.
the fishbowl is not big.
I mean it's nice on every other day, when they just say, hey, fishbowl's open, and you can just drop in and just like sit on their couch. But yeah, if they have it for like socials, it's not very good.
We're gonna get our own office, engineering building.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, we're in the process of applying.
No.
Because I saw that Ace has one, and they hold office hours, and I'm like, why don't we have one?
SSD is a big plus, right?
I would say so, yeah. Well, I mean, it is the end of the semester.
So that, and of course, I mean, attendance has always been lower just because of COVID still. So more people are taking classes virtually and less people are around campus.
Yeah, I did.
The Discord's kind of popping. Also, you guys respond. I need to answer your guys' question.
I got a question. Is the Minecraft server how long is the Minecraft server going to be kept up?
I'm not sure.
I think it should be reset like regularly, at least once a year, maybe once a semester-ish.
Because what I'm wondering is, like, if I wanted to play Minecraft over the summer, could I play on the SSD server?
Yes, you can. Yeah, right. Ranger and I are gonna do an internship together. I'm probably just gonna like share the link with all the interns and be like, join this. Like,
Are y'all Syrian or?
yeah. Hello.
I'm super behind on Minecraft, but it would be fun to like play in a server where there can be other people.
Try to get like all the new snapshot stuff and whatnot. Put Sponge on it so I can build plugins. Do some crazy stuff really so
I didn't play it myself.
Yes, no,
That looks so
great.
good. That looks so
Oh
good.
my god, it was hilarious.
I saw the crafting, like you could throw a crafting in the sky, and I think you're like way out.
Oh, it's so dumb. See the end portal frames?
No.
Okay, so you have to find end portal frames which occur randomly in chests in nether fortresses, and you need to get all 12 of them. So to place the end portal frames down, you have to throw them up in the same as any other item.
Yeah.
And their orientation is random, and they have to be like the right way. So you have a 1 in 6 shot every time you throw it up. And of course, if it lands and hits you, it will damage you. No, they can't break.
Like, so you can't like, pick it back up?
No, you can pick it back up and stuff. But like you have to do it a bunch of times for like all 12 of them. And then when you finally get the last one, the end portal spawns on the other side of the like you just have to see it.
There's something in the end pearls, right? Still.
Oh,
It's complicated.
By the way, is there any interactivity in this presentation?
not really. Also, does anyone have a USB-C to HDMI? Yeah. Never mind, Ranger.
Also, I want to see this because I've never seen this before.
The adapter.
No, no, with the single full scope thing.
Oh.
Oh yeah, it's super sick. I watched that.
All right, here we go. Let's do it. All right, there we go. All right, here we go. Is that too? Wow. Okay, also you can pick up animals and then just fly with them.
Yeah, you just jump. It's like.
And so you had to go find like 5 nether fortresses to get all the damn portals. This is insane. And so anyway, so he has to collect all of them.
How was it that he made the portal box?
Wait, okay, was this?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I think this is roughly it. Look.
What is the update?
So he almost died. So like.
The update is you have no inventory. Yeah.
Okay, look. So over here, right?
Like hold one.
This pigment falls, the helmet flies over it and it damages him and throws him like 15 blocks in the air. Okay.
Oh my god.
You gotta break obsidian.
What? Wait, what?
And then 40 minutes.
It's been 40 minutes?
Wait, those are
Well, it's been
obsidian?
4.5 hours, Bill, right? And now guess what? Look at the time. 4 hours, 31 minutes. And look,
He has to dig out of it.
he has to dig out.
How much time did that take?
It took him like 8 minutes to just dig through it. Which is not that bad, but still.
I feel like if you're gonna make an April Fool's
Wait,
joke,
that's
you should
actually-
make
Oh
it-
yeah, also you can pick up multiple mobs, and if you hold the skeleton, it basically acts like a turret. So he's flying with a chicken and the skeleton like on his head, and using the skeleton's arrows to shoot the end crystals.
All right, well, it's 6:15.
Yep, it's 6:15, guys. We've got a massive audience on Zoom today. Total of one person besides me. Hello, how are you?
Really pancakes over this? Come on.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all for coming. This is our second to last semester. Meeting of the semester, so it's kind of understandable that we don't have a huge amount of people today. But oh my God, why are you guys joining on Zoom like you guys are in person? All right. So just an announcement. Next week is our last event of the semester. We'll have lightning talks and elections, which I'll explain after our presentation today. So an overview of what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to do an intro to software testing, test-driven development, why TDD is cool and why it sucks. I'll do a demo of Cypress and GitHub Actions for some cool practical knowledge. And then, like I said, I'll do an overview of elections. So what is software testing? What is test-driven development? Test-driven development is it's an approach to development that's guided by creating and passing tests to verify that code works as expected. So the idea is you write your tests first before you write your code. So test-driven development gives us this really short software development life cycle. Starts out by writing a test. Obviously, the test will fail because you haven't yet written the code to make it pass, right? So this should tell you that your test should be extensive enough such that they effectively define the requirements of the feature you're trying to implement. Then, of course, you write the code to make it pass. And if you can, after that, if you can find a more optimal or cleaner solution, then by all means, go ahead and refactor. But as we all know, premature optimization is the root of all evils. So that's why refactoring is kind of its own step, right? So 3 rules of TDD. Do not write code unless it is to make a failing unit test pass. So another way to think of that is if you write code, there should be tests associated with this code. Do not write more tests than is sufficient to fail. Do not write more code than is sufficient to pass. So keep it minimal, keep it simple. All right, let's look at an example with JUnit. So JUnit is a unit testing framework used in Java. It's fairly popular. So yeah, I have something pulled up in IntelliJ here. You know, just like every time you do a project in an IDE, most of the files here are just like configuration. So this is all just like configurations. Everything that I wrote is within this SRC folder. Main is my source code. That's like the actual code, that's the functionality. Test, that is the, hello Nathaniel. Test, that is the test, that is testing the code in the main folder. I'll just minimize that. Yeah, right, so really simple project. I have a class named Palindrome Checker. It has one method, is palindrome. Not too difficult, not too complicated, and it does work, right? So basically what it does is, just to explain it simply, if we have like the palindrome race car, it compares the first character and the last character, then the second character and the second to last character, and it just keeps doing that in a loop. If there's any discrepancy, then it's not a palindrome, right? So that's the function that I wrote. Then in my test folder, these are our unit tests. Well, I only have one right now, but how it works is, so I'm using JUnit with Gradle. Gradle is a build automation tool. So if it works really well with IntelliJ and JUnit. So you write your code. When you want to build it, you run all of these tests. If a single one fails, it stops the build, meaning that it will not be deployed. You'll have to fix your tests first, right? So I have this one test. It calls the static method is palindrome, pass in the race car string, and it is in fact a palindrome, so it should expect the result true. So if we were to run that, my computer is super slow, by the way, but if we were to run that, you know, it will pass. And then once it does pass, you know, obviously we're gonna want more unit tests than this. So one way you could do this is like just copy and paste and like have like test 2 and have like a different palindrome or like a, you know, a different unit test like SSD that should return false, right? But as you can probably guess, this is going to take up a lot of space. It's not really clean. We're going to want a function for which you can just pass in an input and an expected output. And that's, yeah, so JUnit provides us with a parameterized test, and it's very similar. Yeah, it's basically just, we can make a parameterized test basically just by like copying our existing unit test and add, like just generalizing it, right? So we want to be able to pass in an input and an expected output. So Boolean expected, right? So just remove all the hard coding, right? Yeah, so this is our function that takes in, you know, input, expected output. This specifies that it's a parameterized test that just tells JUnit that it's a test that needs to be run. And this specifies where we will get our arguments, right? So this is calling a method test2 within the class Palindrome Checker tests, which is this right here. So here we have an entire stream of inputs and outputs. Race car is a palindrome. Race car with kind of a discrepancy in capitalizations is not a palindrome, just for the sake of this, of our definition. You know, we have a few more examples, right? So if we were to run this, it would actually, oh, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I sort of kind of wanted to get into it at the end, but, what is the benefit of doing this instead of just writing your own function that just, does that out that one that pass or fail?
Yeah, so I could just write something that, just system.out.prints everything. So we want something that an automated process can check by itself. Like we as a human can read what is printed to the console, but we want like an automated process to be able to test things by itself. So that's one reason. But also, if you use a dedicated unit testing framework, it's just it's just a bit easier to be able to pass in like a lot of different arguments, because or yeah, I mean, Michael, do you want to
Yeah, I
chime
can
in?
take a stab at it. So like when you're doing software engineering, you're gonna use something called continuous integration and continuous deployment. For example, through GitHub Actions, there's a tool that you use on GitHub. That's what we're using right now for my software engineering project. So basically, we're using Python with the unit test framework in Python. And whenever we push code to our GitHub repository that fails the unit tests, it's gonna, instead of having like a check mark that allows you to merge it, it's gonna show like a red X. And so before you can merge your code to the main branch, you gotta fix it so that it passes all the tests.
Yeah. So we'll actually go through that later. Continuous integration and continuous delivery. Yeah.
I was also gonna add on, I'm not sure if there's a way to do it with print test, but also when you're testing more complicated functions, for example, let's say you have an Android UI. I've done unit tests in Java where it's like you can actually test that the buttons are going through and clicking correctly. And I'm not sure how we would implement that with a print test, but it doesn't sound like it would be fun. And it's like, and when you run a test, you just click it, it instantly goes through all the springs faster than you can click through them. I don't see why it would make sense to go through the hassle of like doing that by hand.
You see that with Cypress, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna use Cypress later on because if you're testing like an actual website that like a big tech company uses, there's gonna be like thousands of tests. Like, do you want to read all of those system.outs? Like, no. Like you're gonna want something that does it by itself really quickly.
So maybe it's just a matter of like, I haven't gotten into a situation where using this.
Right. You'll use it in like programming languages or maybe other classes. Yeah. All right. So that's just a really basic overview of unit.
Can I add something quickly on test-driven development?
Yes.
So in that example,
Oh, and in here.
so what's an example test case that could be valid but doesn't work with the example implementation? Does anyone have an idea?
Anything with a normal output?
No, not quite. I'm thinking something like complex string values.
Well, like regex.
Not quite, but so if you had Unicode values, right? So Unicode encoding can sometimes have like a single visual character that's encoded as multiple Java card primitives. And so if you were to do string.char@, you would be getting basically immediate surrogate pairs of the actual Unicode character. So if you were to try to look at that in reverse, then you would get basically a character that is multiple bytes, and it would just not look right. So if this kind of palindrome was based on the visual representation of characters, and you had to support things like the I with dots above it, like the 2 dots, or the U with dots, and all those types of things, then you would need to do something more sophisticated.
Right. Like you gotta be careful with Unicode. I know it was definitely a problem for me in programming language concepts.
But the point there with TDD is that it's not just enough to be able to write test cases and expect them to work. You have to understand what the intended behavior of the function you're trying to test is. Otherwise, you're just kind of writing a bunch of test cases and throwing them in the dark, but you don't really know if you did the right thing at the end of the day. You just have a bunch of passing test cases, but that's it.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know if I explained this completely, but this is a unit test. Like a unit test is basically like the most basic form of testing. Like it just tests like a single function, you pass in an input, does it give the correct output? Just used for really basic math and logic. This is the assertion, every test has an assertion. It just checks, is the expected output equal to the what is actually output, right? And if not, then it throws an error, right? All right. So basic introduction to unit testing and frameworks, right? All right, let's take a pause here. So I think most people already know that testing is really important. Everyone should do it. And yet it seems like a lot of people don't put a lot of effort into it. Like this is a genuine question. Like how many of you actually do testing in like your, web assignments or like your personal projects or like whenever you make a personal website or something like that? Yeah, Blake is the only one because he made a programming language.
Does
Yeah.
that have anything to do with it?
But yeah, Michael?
Yeah, so as I was saying, like I'm in software engineering right now, and we found testing useful for the back end, but for the front end, like basically we're required to make tests for this course even for the front end. And we found like that we've spent more time like just like figuring out how to like do tests for the front end than just like actually should have just like tested ourselves, make sure it works.
Yeah, and it's like that.
I feel like it's really hard to kind of like see the usefulness of TDD when you're in school, because most of the time when you're in school, you're just doing smaller scale projects. Maybe you work on it for a few months at a time, then you forget about it, and you're not really worried about maintainability, but just getting the thing done and turning it in. But if you're working on something longer term, and Blake's language is a good example of this, then you're going to have to perform those same checks over and over again for like a long time. And that's really where TDD's usefulness kind of comes in, but you don't really get to see when you're just working on these short projects.
So I do game programming, right? And like often, yeah, it's like it's just a different environment though, because I want to use unit tests. I'm like, okay, I want to start with like, oh, just understanding like what I want. But then you develop it, you're like, that's not what I want anymore. Like, so you got to go delete the unit tests, or like the unit tests don't work, or like you need a different interface to the unit test because it's just like because this whole hassle when you're trying to get something done, it's like I'd rather have something I know, like at least like this is in the right ballpark, and then I'll make a test. Like that, right? Like,
Yeah. I think that's a common issue. Something that happened in my internship is like, oh, Eric, like you should make these tests for this web page. Okay, and I do it, and then like suddenly the page is no longer used in production, so like it doesn't even matter anymore. And something that Blake told me is that like, he has his own startup, as many of you know. Like, if you spend too much time testing, then it's almost like a hindrance to being able to pivot quickly, because you're gonna want to change your idea quickly and often.
To be clear, just clear, testing is good. Too much testing can be bad precisely because of that. Because if everything that you test is another piece of code that relies on code you've written, so any changes to that have cascading effects. For the explicit purpose of a startup, by definition, you're rapidly changing whatever you're trying to do in order to meet the needs of the business, right? Every single client you talk to changes what your product is. It's a small website tweak in one place, or it's a giant change to your service. So you need to be careful with that, which is why, like with TDD, like I said earlier, you have to have a clear specification. If you don't have a clear specification, then you're not actually really testing anything, because there's no core specification that the tests enforce. You're just testing that the code does what it currently does, and that's worthless.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this is some people's like kind of approach towards testing. Like, it'll improve the quality of my code. Won't take too much time. Maybe it will. But everyone says that I should, but I don't want to, and so I won't. So for the rest of the meeting, I'm just going to try to focus on forms of testing that, for me, I've found personally useful, and maybe you'll do it in your own internship. So I'm gonna talk about testing in web apps. Testing in web apps is a bit interesting because you're not just testing these little math and logic functions. You also need to make sure that everything is rendering correctly, that user interactions like typing, button clicks, scrolling produces the correct output, and that accessibility is up to standards, right? So there's a few different types of testing. So let's use the example that like we have a website for where you can post blogs like Reddit or something. Like an example of a unit test really simple, like, for example, taking a timestamp variable and turning it into a human readable date. An integration test, tests, it pulls together many functions and modules at once into a higher level function and then tests that. So for example, like an API call to post the blog. That API call likely involves like a dozen other functions. And if you want, maybe it could also like test the connection to the database. So it's just like higher level stuff. And if you do enough of it, then you just get a better, you can be a bit more confident that your app actually works. End-to-end testing is even higher level testing. Here, this is a testing method that involves testing an app's entire workflow from beginning to end. It's testing high-level actions and tasks, user interactions, like entire features. So for example, like I mentioned, like user interface UI, like buttons, links, does it do the right thing? If you fill out a form, like to log in and hit submit, does it actually log you in and reroute you to like your user dashboard or your profile page? So something that we're gonna look at is Cypress Io, which is a JavaScript-based framework for end-to-end testing. But first, any questions at this moment? Yes. Yes, we're actually going to use the same website from the front-end meeting. So good stuff. But
The Minecraft one?
yes, the Minecraft website. But yeah, Cypress is a JavaScript-based framework for end-to-end testing. It runs in the browser mainly, so it's pretty useful in that sense. It's somewhat standard. There's other frameworks that there's other frameworks out there, but they have pretty similar concepts and syntax. Yeah, so let's take a look at the website that we're going to use. It's not in that. Let me just I'll literally uninstall IntelliJ after this meeting. But yeah, all right. So this is. Let me just collapse that. Yeah, this is the website. I have it running. It's the same website as we've left it, but I did add this search thing, so you can search like carrot, and then it gives us a little thing. We can also filter for sold. Wait a minute. Okay, I think I literally just found this bug. The sword
Let's
should
write a test for
the
it.
sword should come back up.
Let's write a test for it.
Okay. Okay.
We may not have enough time, but
This is a bug, but it might actually play well into what I'm trying to do. Right, so yeah, Cypress testing, when you install Cypress, it gives you this big folder. Typically, you don't have to mess a lot with it. It's mostly just like sample tests and like configurations. The test that I wrote is here. So like the source code is purchasepage.js. The test is purchasepage.spec.js. Right, so this is where we're defining our tests. We have like a number of tests here. Let's actually run them first before we dig into the code. Yeah, so like in package.json, I have this little test script. It runs npx cypress open. I already ran it because it takes like a while on my slow ass computer, but yeah. Yep, so this is it. If you click on this, it runs the test. Oh my God. Okay.
we're testing more than just this.
I will
We're testing the will.
restart it. I will restart it. Okay, but yeah, I'll just walk through the code in the meantime. I forgot on which of these yeah. Yeah, by the time I explain the code, it'll have started back up, but yeah. No, stop it. Yeah, so Cypress it's very semantic. like what we're doing here is we're just describing at a high level, what do we want to test in this file? So we want to test the Minecraft marketplace. Each one of these blocks that start with it is like is kind of like a single test, right? So like in this one, we want to test that the website by default displays 3 items, the sword, the house, and the carrot, right? We have a couple different tests here. But before each one, obviously, we want to go to the app, which is localhost 3000//purchase. What's going on here is we're like we want to tell Cypress that when the app first loads, so like when we hit refresh, there should be 3 of these, right? And all of the items are stored in a div that has the ID item container. So here we're basically saying, Cypress, get the list of all of the divs that are inside the element with the ID item container, and there should be 3. So it'll return a list of these 3 elements, and that list should have a length of 3. So yeah, you can tell that like Cypress is kind of like semantic in this sense. Yeah, and then we can just take it a step further, make sure that those 3 items, you know, are the correct ones and in the right order. So we're saying like in the list, get the first one, and it should contain the text carrot. The last one should contain the text sword. Right? It's really simple stuff. Let's see if it's loaded back up. It hasn't. Yeah, question.
So obviously right now, like the website is hard coded. Say an example where like you're reading items from a database and you know like it's updating constantly. How would you write the test? Like would you use a dummy database, like dummy values?
Great question. Yeah, so that this test kind of lacks in that sense because it will only work with the code that is hard coded right now. Like it doesn't pull from an API. If it did, then like all of the tests would break. So this is actually a great setup for mocking. Mocking is a way to provide like if your tests have an external dependency, like a response to an API call or user interaction, then you can mock that, as in like provide a fake version of it. So an example is if our test wants to check which items are rendering, then an API call might be a dependency of that. So our test, like our code will make that API call, but we can have Cypress intercept that API call and just return dummy data. And the reason why that's useful is just so that like if the test fails, then you know it's not because of the API call. So you're kind of isolating what you're trying to test. So if it fails, then you know what you did wrong is how you're handling the response and not actually the API response itself. Yes.
Basically kind of like
It's yes, it's
basically,
yes, it's somewhat like an automated reverse postman.
but you can do more than just mock API requests with that.
Yeah.
So in JavaScript land, because everything is super dynamic, you can just rip out entire parts of libraries and other nonsense.
Yeah, like you can also mock like user interactions. Like I could have Cypress fill out an entire login form, hit the submit button, and then check am I logged in? What page am I on? Right. So really, and yeah, Cypress finally did start. Yeah. So it starts up and we only have this one test file. So let's just start it up. But yeah.
Main thing is that every time you mock something, it's one thing that's different than what actual production is. So the less you mock, the better. Because what people will do is they'll mock way too much stuff, and then you're just testing mocks. You're not even testing production code, because there's no production code anymore, it's just mocks.
Yeah, I mean, on my PC, this takes like 2 seconds, by the way. All right, so yeah, tests are loading. Yeah, so something that's kind of cool is that Cypress loads up an iframe. It'll load up localhost 3000/purchase, which is where our Minecraft marketplace is. It's like it'll embed our website here, and then on the left side, you'll be able to see the more details of it. Any questions in the meantime? Yes.
So kind of like we did, like we say, like mocking, when you do start to write these like really dynamic tests for like these really more complicated user interfaces, how do you, this is really meta, how do you make sure you're not like testing your tests basically?
Testing your tests.
Like, okay, do you test your tests and like how deep do you go down the rabbit hole before it starts to become?
I mean, I guess you need to make sure that like the expected output is like what it should be, and also like yeah, I guess if you use too much mock data, then like yeah, you're not gonna run into things that actually happen in production. Right? Your tests will be very limited.
In general, it's mostly an experience thing. You just have to do it a bunch of times, and then you figure out what things tend to work well and what things break down miserably. I would say in general, if you're writing a mock, you should have some test that is mainly predicated on making sure that that mock works. So for instance, if you're like requesting page data from a backend, you have one test that's basically like, does the page load, which is effectively just does it get things from the backend and makes sense. And then you rely on that, and every other test kind of builds off of that, and you tweak one thing, kind of expand. And if that's the case, you'll tend to do pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, so it did actually run, but we kind of missed it, so I'll run it again. It doesn't take a very long time the second time. Yeah, so you'll see it. I did have, yeah. So you can see it typed in caret and pressed enter, and I failed the accessibility tests because I put no effort into it.
So wait, what exactly happened? What exactly is this test testing?
Yeah, so we can expand each of these tests to, yeah, so I did explain the first one. So yeah, before each test, as I mentioned, first we go to this URL localhost 3000/purchase. We get this container that has all of the items, so you can kind of see it's outlined in orange, kind of. Then we're just checking, yeah. So then we get the first one. We make sure that it has the text caret. Then we get the last one. Make sure it has the text sword. Yeah. So you can kind of look in here to see what the test is, and the description does matter here, just so you get an idea of, what you're doing, right? But like for the second one, what we're doing here is our element that has the search box has the ID search field. So here we're getting that element, we're typing in caret, and then we're hitting enter. I mean, hitting enter isn't actually necessary, but it's a good thing to include anyways. Then we're once again getting the item container. It should have the length 1, just because there's only one caret, right? And then just for good measure, we make sure that the item that's returned actually has the text caret. The thing that I failed is the accessibility test. Ali is short for accessibility because there's 11 characters, hold on, accessibility, right? This is 11 characters, so you kind of abbreviate it as ally sometimes.
It's similar, so the other main popular one is internationalization, is I18.
Yeah. Although that
one like looks like internationalization. This just looks like someone misspelled.
No, it looks like ally, like it works, right?
I
Yeah.
honestly assumed that ally was always just like some like active standards. I just like went with it.
Yeah, like if you don't
By act or something.
if you don't do like accessibility testing on your website, that can actually be a big problem. Like you can actually be sued for like violation of the ADA, like American Disabilities Act or something.
That was one of the things that my startup did. We talked with a couple of businesses about ADA compliance. So there are actually new guidelines released about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so by the DOJ.
Yeah, this is just like a test that, that just comes with Cypress, like.
Yeah. So there's Cypress, and then I did have to import like a Cypress Axe. So it's like a different node module, but yeah, it's they're both Cypress. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of JavaScript based frameworks. All of them do like a really good job at bitching at you if you don't if you don't use HTML's accessibility features. Like if you don't label your images, links, buttons, then people using screen readers can't know what's on your screen. Like if you have an image of, if you has like an image of President Fox on their site, that's what he looks like, by the way. Then you would want to have like a label so that blind people can know with text what is there. Yeah, like so. Yes, there's things like
So wait a minute, you did not pass this test. Does it explain to you what exactly went wrong?
Let's see. It does say that there's 5 errors. Like color contrast, yeah. So it's saying that there's not enough color contrast between the text and the background here. There's no image label on any of these images. There's no labels on these 2 inputs. On the main screen, on localhost 3000, I have like that big landing page. That image also doesn't have a label. I don't know what this means. Region on 1 node? I don't know.
Wait a minute, hold on, it says label on 3 nodes, so that says it filters holes in that label.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so that's actually the thing there, right? Same thing with like parent house and all of that. Like the words are there, but a screen reader needs a marker to say that this is not just a word that happens to be located by the image, but this is a word describing the image. Right? Because otherwise, like, how are they gonna know, right? So you have to attach like that type of metadata information. And so that's what it's looking for.
So so it's interesting because it's basically telling you, yeah, search is you can see that search is located next to the search bar, but it's not like it's actually like connected.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, like for example, this plus means nothing basically to someone who's blind. Like if they know there's a plus, it's not really gonna mean anything. So there's probably some label here for like.
Can we inspect element and just go look at it?
Well, can blind people do that?
We're the ones developing it. It's not for.
I'm saying like.
It's to show that there's a label there, not for blind people. Like what?
Yes, I'm saying like, yeah, okay.
No, they definitely can. I mean, it's harder, but there are tools for it.
All right. Yeah. So let's see what ARIA label there is here.
There's ARIA label create new.
Wow, this is really nested.
So it's the chunk. It's the chunk above what's highlighted. I can't there.
There's so much stuff here.
Don't be if you look at it.
All right. I'll just go through an example.
It had an ARIA label that said create new.
It's just pretending to blank break.
Which is probably not a good label because create new what?
Yeah.
Right, like that, like create a new project, create a new issue, create a fork of this one, create a new file, like all bets are off. Actually, it was probably a menu that did a bunch of those, but point being. So maybe in that case it made sense.
Yeah, so like an ARIA label here
Buy.
could be like buy now, or you could be more descriptive, like buy the carrot or whatever is
What does ARIA
being sold
mean?
here. I have no idea what ARIA means.
I wish I would.
Probably
I never remember this.
something about accessibility. I don't know. Maybe it's a person.
A person named Aria, he was blind.
Accessible rich internet applications.
Yeah, I figured it was
So,
that kind of acronym.
it's basically just a specification for how all the different labels work and how screen readers can rely on them.
So it's particularly useful for just making your website more accessible.
Yeah, most of accessibility with that type of stuff is specifically for screen readers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess another thing about Cypress. So I have on my website this this checkbox that lets you just filter out the sold items. So we'll want to do a lot of, well, at least some sort of tests that specifically have this already checked in. So we can have like a different set of tests, all of which have this new context. So like in this block, we have like a big list of other tests for which they all have this context. They're filtering out the sold, and before each one of these, we get the checkbox and we check it. So let's look at the result of that. So like in this one, before, we defined that, we have to go to the URL, and then we find the checkbox, then we check it, and then we do anything else specific to our test. So like in this one, all we're doing is we're filtering out sold, and then not filling in anything for the search bar. We're just making sure that it returns the carrot and the house. Then we can do another test where we do the same thing, but we actually fill in house in here. So the automated process typed in house letter by letter, and then it just makes sure that the only thing that shows up is the house, and the element contains the word house, and the element sword does not show up. Yeah, and then we want to test that if we filter for sold and then we search for sword, then nothing will show up because the sword is sold. Just another example. Yeah, so like we type in sword, and nothing shows up because everything that has the name sword is already sold.
What happens if you click the checkbox? Can you like still modify the website here?
I can check.
Oh, but it's bugged, I'm sorry.
No, like I'm not sure if checking this would actually do anything. Like, hold
What
on.
about deleting the search?
Yeah, like play the search.
How do I get rid of this? Like the orange stuff.
Click on the check. That works.
Okay, carrot. Okay, so it seems like I can modify the input, but it doesn't actually do anything. So yeah, I did see that the checkbox is actually bugged somehow, because if you click it twice, then the sword just disappears forever. So I would put a unit test for that. I could just, let's just do that. Like, let's check it twice. Right? All right, we're gonna run the tests again. And now we're gonna have another test fail.
I think they would still pass, no?
Wait, why did it still?
Because unchecking it doesn't bring them back. So it would still act as if it was checked.
Okay, so yeah, so that's just the problem with my tests. Filtering out sold, like.
So, because you checked it twice.
Yeah.
So checking it once hides it, and then unchecking it should remove it, which would fail the tests. But since that doesn't work, it doesn't remove it, so the tests are fine.
Yeah, so a correct test would be to make this 3. Like if you check it twice, there should be 3 items. Yeah, so we could run that again. I'm sure you guys get the point. You can kind of see how it's typing in everything and checking things on its own. Yeah, and now this is gonna fail. Yeah, it failed because sword doesn't come back up.
So does it just like reset the web page for every test?
It does, yeah. For each test, it goes back to the URL. It's like a fresh start.
Which is why you have to be careful with like the end-to-end aspect. Because if you're not careful, then you'll start sending API requests to the backend that'll modify like the database. And so now you have really flaky tests. Because not only does like one test depend on like another test, but that test depends on like when it runs later if you're not clearing the database.
This makes sense, basically. And now I'm starting to see more about why tests are useful, because if you, like, when you make changes over time, okay, it's nice to have something like this, which can just do everything on your checklist all at once.
Yeah, yeah.
Real quickly, like, it's automated.
And you can do GitHub Actions because teammates are morons.
That's right. GitHub Actions is super cool, even though I don't use them very often. But, yeah, so another thing is test coverage. So test coverage is just a way to measure like how much of your code is actually like being tested, right? So like if you want 100% test coverage, you're not only going to have to test every function, but also every branch within the function. So like in this example, to test everything, you're going to need at least 2 tests. One for when the user is authenticated and one where the user is not. Typically, well, at least from my experience, test coverage measures like the percentage of lines that are associated with tests. That's usually how it's measured. So like in my internship, for every pull request that I made, every file that I modified needed 80% test coverage. So not only did all tests have to pass, but 80% of the lines needed coverage. And that's not actually a lot, because you can cover a lot of coverage with very low quality tests. Like I was working with React files, and you can just check, does it render? And then that's like a good 50% coverage, really. So there's not necessarily a correlation between high test coverage and high quality tests, but you know, you do want to get high coverage. Yeah.
So since you brought up internships, like let's say if you're going into an internship for the first time, how much experience are you like expected to have in test-driven development? Because like I said, the way school projects work aren't really conducive to testing, but I've had OAs where they asked me what were my experiences with test-driven development and different kinds of testing.
So in my internship, like nobody was telling me you have to write tests first. Like, I mean, I think one person did tell me that like once, but I never did it. Like, but you will have to know like how GitHub Actions work. Like, you will have to know like how to read the errors and know how to fix them. And yeah, but it's mostly like the GitHub stuff, the stuff that you'll actually be working with. Knowing how GitHub Actions work and how to make your pipeline pass. Oh, at least that's from my experience. Yeah. So yeah. So I was just working on a web app. So I mean, you didn't need like 100% test coverage. Like if you're working for like JP Morgan, that's moving like billions of dollars a day, then everything has to be perfect. Like no mistakes anywhere, no creative freedom for mistakes, right? Like, so, yeah. So but there's also the notion of how much test coverage is feasible. Like if you're working with something like Linux, there's never going to be 100% test coverage. There's just no way to test the project in every possible combination of states. Like it's just not going to happen. Like you can make the test better, but you can only make it so much better.
A fun example was that a couple of years ago, they found a bug in the default sort algorithms used by like Java, Python, V8, like everything. Because the way that Virtual works, right, you find the middle of everything. And so they added 2 numbers together and then divided by 2, which has the potential to cause overflow. And so for very, very, very large inputs, like we're talking like 2 to the, like the smallest one that they found was 2 to the 16th power type thing, which is not very practical, but you can run into it with scientific computing. So they had to go and fix things like that. no one caught that in a test. That was caught by formal verification. So like, there's so many levels of this, but the point is like, you're never gonna you're never gonna get it perfect, so don't worry about like the 100% or whatever else. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, so it's like your code either like works or like probably works, basically.
I think branch coverage is good to look at though, in particular, because that makes sure that at least every code that you wrote is some test case goes over that. So branch coverage is probably the best measure of like, are my test code.
Yeah. All right, so I showed how to use Cypress in, this is an instance of Chrome, by the way, like Cypress runs in the browser, so this is like kind of like Chrome, even though it doesn't have the Chrome icon. But you'll also want to be able to use Cypress in the command line so that you can have like your GitHub actions do it by itself, all automated, just CI/CD pipeline. So we'll look at a bit of GitHub actions. I'll explain very briefly what CI/CD is, like oversimplification basically. CI/CD is continuous integration and continuous delivery. Continuous integration is just the process of making frequent commits to a repository, really short software development life cycles. And in that process, you're constantly making changes to the production branch, which will, once you make that change, it will trigger something on a CI platform, such as GitHub Actions. So for example, you make a pull request. GitHub can be like, I'm gonna test all of this code. If it works, then you are able to merge it. Once you do merge it, then we will build, we'll build your web app into JavaScript bundles and deploy it to the cloud, AWS, Google Cloud, whatever you have. So each GitHub action is just a workflow. Like it's a workflow of like arbitrary code, basically. It can be any code. Like you can use JUnit with GitHub actions. Everything we did in JUnit, you can do with GitHub actions. So yeah, like just an example here, like you make a push, you run 3 workflows: test it on Linux, test it on macOS, test it on Windows, right? Although that might quickly make you run out of resources really quickly, because you only have like 2,000 minutes of free resources every year, right? So, but GitHub Actions does have really good support, and like any online service, cloud provider, containerization thing that you might want to use, there will be GitHub support for it. So like, JUnit, AWS, Google Cloud, Cypress Io, and if you really hate yourself, there's Kubernetes. Yeah, so like what you need to do to add a GitHub action, it's really simple. Well, I don't know how simple it is, but so you create a directory called .github, and then you put all your GitHub actions inside of the workflows directory, and each one of these YML files is one GitHub action. YML stands for I forget what it stands for, but it's just like a configuration. Yeah. Well, doesn't YAML stand for something itself? Yeah, I thought it was like YAML ain't markup language.
So
But
that's the new one. They backdated it, so now it's a recursive definition.
yeah. All right. So point is, YAML is mainly used for like configurations.
They just stole it from
Yeah. So I did not write this. Like if you use an online service, they'll provide you with something like this. So like, and then you can just modify it to your needs. So basically what this does is, this is the name of the GitHub actions that will show up on GitHub. So we can take a look at it here. There's this tab here for GitHub actions. You can see all your workflows here. You can see I have a lot of failures because I don't pay attention to accessibility. Yeah.
So don't pay attention to accessibility. Add accessibility testing, fix accessibility testing, fix.
Yeah, that was me this morning. But yeah, Cypress Tests, that is this here, Cypress Tests. And I want to have this run on every push. I believe this is every push to master. I don't know if it's every push to.
I think it's all brand.
Okay, yeah, this is all every push to every branch, although that may not be a good idea because like if you just make a push to like a development branch, you might not need to run tests on it. So you're just kind of like wasting money and resources. So you can have a little thing that's like test it when I merge to master and test when I create a pull request. Yeah. So here we specify like yeah, so GitHub will create like a container, like an instance of Linux or Ubuntu specifically with Docker, I believe. So it's like a container. Yeah, and yeah, so I literally copied all this, so I don't understand 100% what all of this does, but yeah, like with the with keyword, you're basically specifying like environment variables or inputs to your workflow. So Cypress, it needs to build your code. So we specify what is the command to build our app and what is the command to start our app, right? So we specify that in there. You know, the default commands worked for me, although it might not work for everyone. But yeah, that's basically how it works. You literally just add this file, and then once you create a pull request, or once you add it to master, or once you create a pull request with this new file, then every time you push, all of these tests will run. So like, let me just add something random here. Like, I like modified test, just to check that how the sword was disappearing. All right, let's commit that. And let's push. Visual Studio Code is great for version control, by the way.
Definitely when you start doing crazy stuff though, make sure you know how to do git in the command line, because you will need to rebase.
All right, so we'll refresh and we'll see like a little orange dot to show that it's running. Why is it not running? Okay, I think it's just still pushing. Like it wasn't even like a big patch file. Okay, yeah, so we can see the orange dot, it's running. It usually takes like 2-ish minutes, like in total, because it actually needs to download all of the node modules, which can take a long time, and then start the app, and then start Cypress, and then actually run the tests. Yeah. Yeah. So it'll give us an error in like 2 minutes saying that like, oh, like there's not enough color contrast on this link. Well, yeah, it's basically how it works. Any questions about GitHub Actions?
So this is about to tell you that your test is going to fail, right?
Yeah, I mean, not about to it. It'll take a while, like I said. Oh, it's running. Yeah, so you can see.
So when it does fail, does the code actually get pushed?
Well, I already pushed it. It's just running the tests on the code that's been pushed. Like I just pushed it to master, so maybe not a good way to do things. But something you can do to actually, like typically what you'll want to do is have your GitHub Actions run on like a pull request. Or actually, no, I think I did not push to master. I'm in the branch Cypress demo, right? So you can see my tests fail, but I can actually merge it anyway. So it's like, what's the point of these tests, right? So, but you can actually do some enforcement with these tests. It's, I forget what it is. Where's branches? Okay, I did write it. Yeah, enforcing code correctness. Yeah, settings, branches, add rule. Yeah, settings, branches. Okay, so we want to add rules to master, I believe. Frick. Okay, no. Yeah, it's branch protection. We want to protect our master. It's like our little baby that everyone on the internet is going to see. So we want to require a pull request before merging, meaning you can't, like you
Oh my god.
what?
It's a drop down menu.
Yeah, like you can't push directly to master, basically. And this is the important one. You need the status checks to pass. You can't have your tests fail and still merge anyways. All right, let's save that. Just pattern, you know, Eric's rules. Oh, all right. Yeah, it'll ask you for your password if you do anything in the settings for a repository. But yeah, now we have our. Why do I have 5 security vulnerabilities? Whatever, probably doesn't matter. But yeah, so now we can see it actually won't let us. Why is it still letting me? Okay. Yeah, so there were some drop downs there. It's probably not that complicated. I had this working the other day. Okay, require status checks to. Yeah, I mean, I have required status checks to pass. Status checks that are required. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, you need to specify which status checks, I think. Is that true? So like, yeah, Cypress run. Okay. There, we save that. I don't know if there's a, yeah, save changes. Let's go back. All right. And now our repository is going to be so good. It's like, if you have bad code, you can't even merge it. Okay. I don't understand. Okay. Just look it up. I mean, you guys get the point, right? Like, that's not even true. It's like not all checks have failed. Well, I think it means by like all checks, it's like there's one check and it's just this one file, probably. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you guys get the point. All right. Any questions about that? About Cypress? About yeah. All right. Epic. We're all masters in here. Yeah.
Wait, what does that say? Like you'll get sued if it's
Huh?
You get sued.
Oh yeah, you can get sued. There was this one store, I think it was Winn-Dixie maybe. They got sued for like because their website wasn't accessible, and like instead of just making it accessible, they just chose to fight in court. I'm like, why? Like it'll be cheaper just to like fix your website. Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not.
So at what point, like, would you be liable for accessibility lawsuits? Like, for example, if you're someone who just makes your own personal websites and puts them out on the web, should that open you up, or do you have to be offering some kind of legal service?
So in general, it's considered to be any type of, all of the accessibility stuff applies same as like your standard ADA, like physical accessibility, right? So if you have a public facing business where the general public is expected to interact with your business, then it needs to meet accessibility. So like if you have stairs at a restaurant, you need to have a ramp as well. Same thing with like a handicap bathroom. If your restaurant has a website for public customers, that needs to be accessible too. Now, with accessibility and stuff in particular, it seems like there's generally some leeway when you have smaller businesses. So I think there's a cutoff of like 10 employees, or there's various other things like that. That is not super clear case-wise.
Yeah.
But in general, it's only going to be the larger companies you have to worry about because A, there's enough of them, and B, there's a lot of lawsuits in that area that are really frivolous. That's just unfortunately the way that a lot of the ADA cases go.
Yeah.
Which doesn't actually help achieve any of the accessibility because most of the cases are nonsensical, and so everyone looks at that and it's like, well then, why bother? So.
Accessibility is important. Yeah. So we mainly looked at like front-end development testing. But like, what are some examples of like things that we can do like with the back-end side of things? Yes.
You can test that query to a database or something.
Yes, a query, but before we can even query things, like we also need to like connect to a database. What are some other things? Yeah, I mean, I guess like make sure that the data is actually like constrained within a schema or any other things within the database that like
API reps.
what did I write here? Yeah, does authentication work? Like
That's a big one.
yeah, so just a few examples, but yeah, some testing frameworks that maybe you'll use in these common languages. C++ has Google Test. I have not used it personally. I found it on Google, but yeah, Java, JUnit is actually commonly used. I used it in programming language concepts because Blake made me. He was my TA. PyUnit, I think PyUnit is like part of Python, right? Like if you have Python, you have PyUnit.
There's PyTest as well.
Yeah.
There's also unit tests, all of those.
Yeah.
I used Tavern for an internship, REST API.
And then there's JavaScript. There's frameworks just for like vanilla JavaScript, and also if you're using Node.js.
No one uses Mocha.
Okay, never mind. What should I have put here then?
I don't know, I'm just leaving.
Okay.
We had to use it for software engineering, it was miserable.
Yeah, I think I used Mocha for Dr. Thomas's class in Intro Software Engineering as well, and it's all right, but whatever.
Wait, what was that? What's that?
Oh yeah, if you use MATLAB, I think the only testing framework is like the one that MathWorks gives you. It's like
You don't need a testing framework, it's just math. Math is always correct.
okay, well, what if you're doing something besides math?
Well, then it's not MATLAB.
Okay, all right. So yeah.
Moral of the story, don't use MATLAB.
Yeah, I run my website off a MATLAB server. It's solar powered.
Any overall questions on anything I talked about? Epic. Oh, genius is here.
Should I go back a few slides? There was something that I saw. Forward a bit.
Yeah, and I love how you said like,
This?
you have Python and you have PyTest already. Like in Python, if you don't have anything, it's a pip install name of library here.
Oh yeah, but installing pip is difficult though. Yeah.
Install anti-gravity.
It doesn't come with Python.
Well, for me it didn't. Yeah. Was this what you were talking about, Blake?
Yeah, this reminded me. So it's a fun story on the does authentication work. So for my software engineering project, someone implemented routes where they didn't actually check to see if the user was authenticated before using them, which meant that anyone who had access to the API, which is everyone because by definition everyone has access to the API, could just like modify tutors in the system to like add them to courses and remove them and like change their profile and like access their phone numbers and like all kinds of other stuff. It was ridiculous. So I noped out of that and took like, 6 hours one night to just rewrite the whole authentication system and say, copy what I did here, don't screw it up again.
Well, maybe that was intentional, Blake. That's democracy at work. Okay.
Thanks for a great story.
But like, so like, that's why you can use things like tests, like automated testing, right? So one of the things that I'm working on that I haven't really figured out how, but hopefully I will, is something that runs through all of the different routes and tests to see if an unauthentic user can access them. So that's what I'm trying to do. The problem is I don't know how to get all of routes, but you got some hooks.
This is a great meme. It's like, this is like such a common problem. It's like, guys, my code isn't working. Like, what's wrong with it? I don't know. It's not working.
Yeah, don't be that guy. Just be like, it's not working. Here's the error message. And by the way, here's like an actual like copy paste of my code and not a screenshot taken with a potato.
All right. Yeah, so we're going to talk about elections and lightning talks. Ranger, okay. Oh, I think it's on.
It'll load.
Okay. So I'm just gonna keep this pretty quick, because it's already been like over an hour. But basically, we have elections next week on Tuesday, so that's our final meeting of the semester, probably. So I encourage anyone who's shown up to meetings consistently to run, because basically we have a lot of old people in our board right now, and when we leave, if no one else joins, the club's going to die. So basically, all of you in here in person, I know you've come to a lot of meetings, so just apply for something, okay? It's that simple. And yeah, let me use that.
You speaks it like it is, like.
So yeah, help keep SSD cool. Yeah, you don't need any kind of experience, even if you don't think you're gonna do well in the role, you can still run for it. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through the roles as well, but obviously choose the one you think you would be best for, or you can choose many. You can run for all of them if you wanted to. There's only like a couple that you need experience for, and that's like president, essentially.
Yeah, you don't even need to be smart to be president. Case in point.
So yeah, so I'll just go through. Involvement officer, party planner, okay? And yeah, a lot of these positions are really informal, and you'll just learn what you have to do on the job. So yeah, and they're all easy, by the way, so don't be intimidated.
I feel like SSD is basically like a self-deprecating teen, right?
It's really casual. It's really casual. Program officer. Yeah, you find the SSD room for the semester, which should only take a little bit of time each semester.
It doesn't.
Don't listen to him. So yeah, you'll also be having a say in like what kind of content we present on. So it's kind of you and the president and probably vice president will be like talking about what meetings you should put on and stuff like that. And Trevor is our current program officer. You can contact him, that Discord there, if you want to ask about it. Outreach, yeah, Michael. Outreach officer. Basically, you send out the Discord messages, do all the kinds of communication things. Yeah, reach out to Michael. He's been doing a really good job, and he just joined recently, so really cool. By the way, all these positions technically open up. There's no like, officers are not like automatically reelected, so all positions are technically open.
Their position that like needs to have a position filled?
Treasurer, I mean, yeah, president, vice president, and treasurer have to be filled, I believe. Yeah.
By like someone other than the incumbent?
I don't know. I actually haven't been keeping track of it. I know Eric is definitely not going to be president, according to him.
yeah.
There's no term limitations or anything like that. If you manage to win the election for president 4 times and then you graduate, fine.
Yeah, so there's no limit to how many times you can be president or
Yeah,
any
like,
other
I
thing.
guarantee you people will get sick of you by then.
Yeah, like, just heads up, like, I'm not gonna run for president or vice president, I'm just gonna run for like, whatever position is, like, no one else wants to run for.
Yeah, so Eric's going to fill in instead of being president next year, or this next week. oh, treasurer, whoops. So yeah, treasurer, you basically just have to watch this like 15-minute long tutorial from student government, and then you still won't know how to do it. But you can figure it out. But yeah, you don't need to know how to manage anything to be treasurer, but we do need someone.
Yeah, we need to get those shirts.
Yeah, you'll be getting the shirts next semester, that's
There
for
is
sure, in the fall.
in there. So CISE organization should have like an actual like bank account that's managed by the department. So you can coordinate with the person in the front on that, so.
Yeah. I don't know. So yeah, you'll be learning a lot on the job here, and but of course everyone's going to be here to help you. So it's not just you learning all this stuff, because I had to just learn some of it the other day to try to get shirts, which I learned we can't because we didn't do it right. So we'll get them next semester with your help as a treasurer. Vice president, this is me. Oh wait, I forgot to say, Kaijin is the treasurer. Yeah, you can ask him. Well, he's technically not, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, basically you're just going to be helping with everything as the vice president, especially whatever the president asks, you're just going to help them with.
Yeah, I asked Ranger to talk about this.
Yeah, Eric asked me to do this presentation right here, so here we go. And basically as president, you basically are responsible ultimately for everything, though you delegate to your other officers.
That's
Yeah, that's Eric. Not soon to not be Eric though. So basically everything. Yeah, reach out to Eric if you want to know about that. Yeah, so if you want to run, just send an email to our ufssd.org@gmail.com by April 10th. Yeah, 5 days from now.
That's like the Sunday.
Yeah. So welcome, whoever that was. So you just write 200 words. It's really informal, less than 200 actually. But,
No thanks.
okay.
Just read them.
Okay, cool. So yeah, really informal, less than 200 words on why you want to run, what do you think you'll contribute, and things like that. Yeah, elections will be next week. And you have to give a small speech on that day. Also, it's not really that formal. If you want to decide to run on that day, you technically can. And you can run for any position and stuff. So if spots open up and you want to run all of a sudden, then go ahead. Yep. That's about you. According to our constitution, you cannot
You cannot what?
run on the day of, but you know,
If
You
there's a
know.
if there's a vacant position, that's one thing, but if someone like said, yes, I wanna run, then that's it.
right. So yeah, definitely submit your email by April 10th to guarantee your spot. Yes.
Yeah.
To guarantee your spot as an applicant.
Yeah, so these slides were posted in the announcements channel. I'll post them again later. If you have any questions about any positions, feel free to message me or Ranger or any of the officers really. Yeah, so I'll just fill in whatever position nobody else wants to run for, just so that other people can get experience in running SSD and continue the club, you know, without Ranger or I or Blake or yeah, everyone who's gonna be leaving this year. Yeah. All right. So next week, elections, that'll be at the start of it, but we'll also have lightning talks. Lightning talks, if you don't know, it's a semesterly tradition that we do. So now it's your turn to give the presentation. You can give like this should be like, I guess like, try to keep it at 5, but you can give a 5-minute talk on whatever you like. Really, it doesn't have to be anything educational even. Like it can be an informal tech talk, you can demo a project, just do something fun. Something that we had last year was this. Hope it loads. Trevor.mp4. Yeah, so it's playing Never Gonna Give You Up on the tuba. But yeah, so we've had some really cool stuff. So we've also had web scraping with Soup. I gave a talk on why JavaScript is stupid and dumb. I also gave a talk on why MATLAB is terrible and bad. So you can kind of tell like a pattern there. But yeah, also how to play the tuba, really great stuff.
I never thought I'd see those 2 bullet points like next to each other. Why Java is stupid and dumb and how to play the tuba.
But yeah, someone last year talked about like golf languages, which is like how to write programs in like the least amount of characters possible.
It was so impromptu. It was whoever the computer engineer major was. I remember, like Alan maybe?
No, it was not Alan.
Give it long hair.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
the long hair.
I think he graduated.
Alan's like the only person I can think of.
No,
No,
he
it wasn't Alan.
oh, yeah.
There are 2 elements.
Or there are 2 Allens, whatever.
The Alan who has a NASA cap, right?
No, it wasn't that.
But yeah, also hackathon projects, you know, I didn't finish my Swamp Hacks project, but I'm still working on it to this day. I'm gonna actually show it off next week, so that'll be my lightning talk. And of course, you guys can talk about anything, you know, anything that you guys are personally interested in, any project, any concept, like really anything. So it'll be a cool event next week. We'll have pizza, we'll have elections, we'll have lightning talks. It'll be the last semester, I mean, the last event of the semester. I think this semester has been going pretty well. But yeah, really excited. So please, hope to see you guys next week. All right.
And my lightning talk to you, why Eric is JavaScript in MATLAB.
If it makes sense, then sure.
Step one, they haven't been seen in the same place before.
By the way, we only have one person running for an officer position so far, and that's me.
Oh,
So definitely,
I'm running for
nice.
The white talks, I can enable it.
Have something started.
Okay.
You can add to it if you want, yeah. All right, thanks. All right, see ya.